Sila.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning. My name is Muhammad, a student from UM. Talking about good and quality education system, how do you define that? Where are we now and where are we heading to? And my second question, talking about future. As a young Malaysian student, youth, how can we contribute for the betterment of our community, our nation and mankind? Thank you very much.
Well, that will take me at least, I don't know, 1 hour to at least explain what is a good, of course, quality education system. We believe we have a good system, but what we need to do, of course, to improve upon it so that we have got better quality education. I think generally Latin Farida seems to be agreeing with what I say. Of course, the product of that system is what you see here today. Most of us are the product of that system. I'm a product of the system. I'm not too sure I'm good or not, but it's up to you to evaluate. But of course, we're not just talking in terms of the present situation. I spoke just now about the global change that's happening around us and around the world that warrants us to not only take note of that, but of course do something about it so that the future leaders that we want to create or develop will have not only the knowledge, but those so-called relevant knowledge, information, technology, skills that are needed for the world, for the country at large. So that's why I think the interest of the public into what we have today as far as education is concerned is very real. As Minister of Education, I've received a lot of inputs and views, memoranda, people who has very strong interest in education. And I always talk to my staff in my ministry to say that education is a vital subject, and every Malaysians especially are expert into education. Every Malaysian. And you cannot say that they are wrong because they have their own views. My mother, who didn't have this so-called opportunity to go to tertiary education, also is an expert in education because she knows what to do. She will tell you that this is important. I think that is part of educating the young, of course, the children. So what we need to do, of course, is to have a look into what we have today. I sure believe when this panel sits later on, there will be a very thorough, I would say, look into what we have. I would believe there's some very, I would say, chilly comment, chilly mean pedas, about what we have now, and propositions that we need to take very serious view of reforming our education system. Of course, that is very easy to say, but how do you do it? That is more important. Some even in Parliament spoke about the need to study what we have had until today. The last report that we have was Tun Razak report. That was about more than 30 years ago. So, and they said, they proposed that they should have a Muhyiddin's report. So whatever it is, I think we recognize that there is a need to have a good system. And this is expressed very clearly in our NKRA. One of the 6 GTP that we spell out in the NKRA is access to quality education. And the key word, of course, is quality. Where are we now? We have achieved to a certain extent in terms of building the young people who are knowledgeable. But it's not good enough. Now, one good example, for example, is in the area of technical and vocational education. Prime Minister spoke in presentation of the 10 Malaysia plan. And then he mentions about more than 80% of our workforce are people who has just an SPM certificate. Not that we are looked down upon them, but the fact is those levels of education is insufficient to fulfill these present needs of the new economic model, where we need more skills. So there is a major exercise that should be coming later on in the 10 Malaysia Plan, and how do we upskill and how do we reskill those people already in that sort of job functions. At the same time, what sort of opportunities that you provide for those people who are in schools to go into that stream. When I say about vocational technical, it's not saying that the other sectors or subsectors of education are not important. But in many developed countries, a good example was when I visited France. I met the Minister of Education. He was telling me that he has got 50% of the total student population in the vocational area. I was just back from Jakarta, Bapak, and ketemu dengan Minister of Education. He was saying that in Indonesia now, the plan is to move into what they are today, 37%, into about at least 50 to 60% into vocational technical education. So we need to also move into that area, because this fits in very well with what the Prime Minister has stipulated about moving into high income economy, into areas which has got value add. And this is something that we need to look at into our education. How does the young people contribute to achieving these objectives? Obviously is to study hard. And of course to be as creative as possible. And this issue of creativity and innovation is vital now. I did mention in my earlier speech about whether our education system provides that room for our students to be more creative and innovative. It is something which I think educationists and experts can dwell into more detail. But there are areas that we feel that we need to do. As far as the government is concerned, the provisions of infrastructure for education is universal. Everybody has a chance to go to school. We make sure that they have enough teachers. Of course, some schools are better than the other schools because of infrastructure. But of course, the plan for the future is to make sure that we treat everybody fairly, so that the access to education or quality education is available to every citizen of the country. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, Tan Sri, I'm Jake Yong, a blogger. I want to ask you, you've said that under the PM's 10 Malaysia plan, you all plan to focus on innovation and creativity. And just now you said you plan to nurture the leadership of future leaders in our local education institutions. So at this end, would you be abolishing the UUCA, the University Colleges Act? Will you be, to promote innovation and creativity? Can you?
Well, I think the amendment to it has already been made. I think all the vice chancellors and the KSU of Ministry of Education mengangguk or agree. That provides, I think, more rooms for the students in universities to do what they feel they want to do. Some universities or campuses have provided speakers' corners for them to air the views of anything. I think being citizen, of course, they are guided by rules and regulations and laws of the country. They are not spared. So I think, but it doesn't mean because of those things that kids or children or our students in universities cannot be creative and innovative. I think the question of the system of education is a question of how teachers or lecturers or instructors deliver the knowledge to the kids, and whether there is more room or it's just merely based on textbooks and curriculum per se. So as I mentioned in my speech, there must be more of these approaches or way that we do things in education. And I do agree, as Minister of Education, there's a lot more things that need to be done. So I do not believe in the abolition of the use Akta Auku, what we call in Bahasa Malaysia, is something really that critical. More importantly, of course, is what you do with the present system, how do you provide educations, what are the initiatives that we have taken so far that create the so-called quality education for our children. I think that's more important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question?
If there is no question, can I ask one more question? Is it okay?
You are the same guy who has asked the question? Can we give
Is
another
it
person?
okay?
Siapa ada lagi nak tanya? Kalau tak ada, it's okay. Yeah, please.
Assalamualaikum Tan Sri. My name is Abdul Azim. I'm from Sanwi University College. I would like to ask you about human capital and high economic income. So, yes, I do agree that I don't think we are lagging in our education system. But I would like to know if how about our education in our patriotism as a future leader? Does that play a role? Because from what I've seen nowadays, that our future leaders and our students nowadays are more concerned about their personal gain rather than our national interests. So what do you have to comment on that? Thank you.
It is a very important component of education to instill the so-called spirit of patriotism and nationalism, especially if you are Malaysians, the love for the country, willing to serve, and contribute, and of course be willing to stand up to defend your right as Malaysians. These are important things. And one of the things which I mentioned in my speech about the need to relook into the history, learning of history, where there are obviously, when you go through that process of teaching, learning history, of course, they need to understand that spirit that drive this country forward, the contribution of past leaders, the struggle to achieve independence, the right to defend yourself in times of adversity. There are a lot of things that we need to do. So I think, of course, there are some views to say that you need to relook into our history book, and the way how history is taught, and to go beyond just the boundaries or the borders of Malaysia, to also understand the history of the world. I was very surprised that when I met a lot of Europeans and Americans, they only understand and know what is in their country. Of course, it's important to develop that nationalism in the country, but of course, being a global citizens now, it is not sufficient just to be orang kata idealistic and nationalistic about things. You have to be a global person. So I think that is important, and in order to do that, of course, is to see how the teaching of history is done in schools. What you teach. It's not just to remember the dates when Francis Light landed in Penang. And I still remember it today, 1876, isn't it? Because I memorized it. Because they asked me objective question. But what if Francis Light have not landed in Penang? Or what if Samuel Raffles have not landed in Singapore? Would Singapore be what it is today? I mean, these are creative thinking. I've been told about this sort of exercise been done in some other countries. But here, they ask you about, the Panko-Laut Treaty, which is so important to understand. But what if there's no Panko-Laut Treaty? What if there's no independence, for example? So these are not something which is inside that. Maybe it is by way of inference, but not really into depth. So those, I think, components of teaching of what called history is important. Some suggested that we should introduce, for example, at my ministry, we say about Malaysia Negaraku. The idea, of course, because some people feel you have to start from young to teach our young people to understand history, to appreciate what this country is all about, to appreciate the cultural diversities, different languages and different what called religion and whatnot. I tried to do that. We tried to introduce, but when we speak to some groups of people who say, this is not important, no, this is not good. So we were a bit cautious about it. But I think what is more important to see how the syllabuses and curriculum that we have today, as far as that, it's not just history, I would believe it could transcend beyond history. It's how teachers teach and sometimes preach our students to understand the value of is nationhood, the spirit of nationalism and patriotism. Okay? Yeah. Yes, please.
Yes,
okay. Ladies and gentlemen.
Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera.
certain things I want deep in my heart. I feel there's still segregation in our education system by choice. In the sense that we have Chinese school, Indian school, agama school, and sekolah kebangsaan. Sorry, I did not introduce myself. My name is Abdul Rahim Awang from UITM. What concerns me, we are looking at one nation, one Malaysia. We're looking at something that is to be together. But if our children goes to different schools with different ethnic background, which is, I think, is not going to build up a one nation situation. It goes back to my school time. I'm from Johor Tan Sri. I'm from English College. I graduated from there. I have Chinese friends, Indian friends in the college. We grew up together. We understand each other more, and we understand each other well. But now, when we have this segregation of schools, this is very critical, whereby you don't nurture these young children at a younger age, and they become segregated at the earlier part, and they become. This is something that I think is quite challenging for us as a nation. And can I suggest something, Tan Sri? Can we have schools in our sekolah kebangsaan teaching Tamil, teaching Chinese, have agama in it? Because when I was studying in Johor, we have sekolah agama in the afternoon. So it's not a separation of the situation. I don't know, this is something that could be challenging on the situation, but to me, that could forego with a unity within our nation with the younger one. Okay, thank you, Nazri.
Thank you. There's nothing wrong with our education system, because it's all inside there. I have to be very careful when I speak about this. That's tomorrow a big headline to say Minister of Education, Deputy Prime Minister say abolish again, like, no, sorry to say. We have that inside our system. We have that in our education system. You want Chinese, you want Mandarin, you want Tamil. Of course, that policy, which is supposed to be a POL, People's Own Language Plan, did not progress as fast as we want. I mentioned when this issue popped up last week, about 500 odd schools of the 7,000 primary schools provide teachers to teach Mandarin and, of course, Tamil. There must be wisdom in that decision earlier, why that was suggested, and it should have been implemented fully, so that if the parents is Chinese or Indians, and he thought that the kids need to know the mother tongue, now you can go to the sekolah kebangsaan, because we teach them the mother tongue. I'm not saying don't go to sekolah jenis kebangsaan. That's another issue of the legacy that we have to accept. But also it has created a lot of complexities in our education system. Some people even say it's confusion. Not Confucius, Confucius. But I think I have directed that the Director General of Education to ensure that from next year onward, all schools, of course, will take a bit of time. First, to get the teachers that we need to teach in Mandarin and Tamil. It is not going to be compulsory, but obviously parents who come from either Chinese or in Tamil background feel they are more comfortable, they can let the kids to study that in the sekolah kebangsaan or national schools without any problems, and make sure that they are quality teaching so that they can have good command of Mandarin. I always mention this as a matter of being proud. My chuchu, my granddaughter, who's the eldest, is 8 years old, studies, I think in KDU, or I don't know, I'm not too sure, sekolah kebangsaan. So she was telling me one day to Ayah, she said, I got my test result. Okay, Suraya, what you get? I got distinction for my English, very good. I got distinction for my Mandarin, very good. I got B for my Bahasa Malaysia. So I'm proud, at least, the opportunity are there, because the learning and teaching of Mandarin, of course, Tamil as well, is available. So I think the system is there. But of course, some parents feel they have a choice. If Farida say, come to my school is better than sekolah kebangsaan, but you have to slightly pay more because I teach a better quality system. It's okay, but obviously we would like to see that the national schools be improved upon in terms of curriculum, the quality of teachers, in terms of the way how we teach, so that at the end of the day, well, while you have choice, you will always choose the best, and the best could one day be the sekolah kebangsaan, without any argument. Then, when you say what a choice you have got, I will go to sekolah kebangsaan. Because why? They teach the best in maths, the best in science, the best in English, and everything is best. That is not something of our call ambition, but I think something which can be achieved. So there is major change that need to be done to achieve that sort of standard of quality of education in our country. Okay?
I'm sorry, but we have time for one last question.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this chance. First of all, I'm sorry if my English is not so good. My name is Asep Nur Jaman, from Muhammadiyah University of Malang, Indonesia. I'm very surprised with the development of education in Malaysia. So I come to Malaysia now. I want to involve in this meeting. My question is, I want to know how the government policies in Malaysia in supporting education system, because I know Malaysia has a good education. Now, if I compare with my country, and then second, how the relationship between Islam value and education, the relationship between Islam value and education? Is there any relationship or no? Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Good to hear somebody from Malang to say that our education system is good. It takes people from outside coming to Malaysia to recognize you have got a very good system. But Malaysians being Malaysians say, tak bagus lah, not so good lah. But but this is a long story, of course. Some say it is a legacy that we have from the British system, which had good education system. Of course, now it's no more a British system. It is very much revolutionized, become a Malaysian education system quite completely. While we do emphasize, for example, the importance of English, just now Tan Sri Yasman mentioned about English, I did not respond, but I concur with you more than 100% the importance of English, not just for business, for many, many other things as well. So we need to, as we said just now, we have developed, but education being dynamic, it's not static, it's always evolving and changing from time to suit the requirements of the country, of course, the global community. So that's why, as we said just now, as I've said just now, while you say it is good, there is a need for us to improve further. And this is why we need to look at everything that we do and what else can we do more to improve the system. The question of the issue of Islamic value is not an issue at all. Education itself is Islamic, without even saying it is Islamic. Because in Islam teaches us to learn. I can quote many surah in the Quran mention about that. Yeah. Apa nama dia sebut, of course the hadith. There's many hadith. Utlubal ilma wala bisin. Talabul ilmu faridatun ala kull muslimin wa muslimatin. Kul hal yastawi allazina ya'lamun wal lazina la ya'lamun. That's ayat Quran. So education in Malaysia, even without saying it is Islamic, it has all the values of Islamic values, which is universal. Of course, aside from that being true, it's also important for us to teach Muslims, of course, the aspects of Islamic, education, to read the Quran, to understand Hadith, of course, munakahat, janayat, and all other things that we learn in schools. And of course, we have got our Pendidikan Islam, which we made it compulsory for the Muslim kids to take. And of course, aside from that, we have also other system of JCOF that we have introduced that provides opportunity for all. Now, it's not just for Muslim, but even non-Muslim students can also take up this subject if they want to. So, and at the same time, because we see that there is a need for us to, of course, improve the teaching of Islamic education in our schools. And this is what we're doing, and we'll continue to improve from time to time. So I think that's what I can do today to respond to some of the questions. Thank you very much.